All right, welcome back to the show, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well, Neely. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. You're going climbing today. Where are you going?
I'm going up to 10 Sleep to a crag called the Temple.
Oh yeah, you've been doing day trips to 10 sleep, which is crazy.
Yeah, I managed to move to Lander to have readily accessible climbing and not be taking 3 hour each way day trips. And now I'm taking 3 hour day trips to somewhere else.
Well, that's great. I
Um,
mean, we're always going to get bored with our home crags, right?
yeah, and it's August. It's warm, and the conditions are just kind of better in there. So
Yeah,
um, it seems worth it.
that's what I say about the Boulder Rock Club. That's my that's my home crag right now.
Well, yeah, we have been joking quite a bit that the conditions it's always 62 degrees and we call it the trophy room, but it's BJ's shop where we train. So
Wow.
it's always perfect conditions in there, and it's not a 3 hour drive.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Cool. So just like a little update on where you are with your project, because we've talked about it before in recent episodes. So what's going on there?
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I didn't do it. Um, got really close. Felt like it could be any go. Who knows? Um, I don't know. That sounds sort of defeatist, but it's not. I was psyched with how I climbed on it, and but yeah, just didn't quite make it happen. So I'm planning on climbing on it this fall, which will be like September into maybe October. Although I did go out there the other day, and it's looking like it might be getting a little wet. So
Oh,
fingers crossed that doesn't happen. And yeah, I'm just kind of in my summer lull, like I'm still climbing outside a bit, but I'm also training. And yeah, just generally trying to get prepared for the fall season and whatever that holds.
yeah. Okay. So how many seasons have you worked on this project?
It's a reasonably good question. I think that's three.
So I know of a lot of climbers who don't like to get on things more than 3 or 4 times. And so knowing I have no idea how many times you've gotten on this thing, but 3 seasons is, it's a good time commitment. How do you keep yourself motivated to keep going back?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've covered this on the show before, maybe we've just talked about it, but I really don't. It doesn't. It's not something I feel like I have to try hard to do. Um, it's sort of like if anything, I have to try harder to not climb on it whenever physically possible. Uh, Even like when I finished climbing on it, it was getting hot. The conditions were going downhill. I was noticing that like I was starting to get tired, and wasn't, even though I was like reaching my high point still and having good goes, like getting through the hard opening boulder, like I went from just like feeling like I was smashing it to it feeling like I was climbing it with a weight vest on.
Mm,
And some combination of declining strength and power, just specific fatigue, all of it. Like it was clearly time for a break, but like, yeah, I didn't want to. Like all I wanted to do was keep going. Um, and so yeah, it's not something that I feel like I really have to try hard to do to stay motivated. Like I really want to do it. And it's also, I mean, it doesn't hurt that like it's one of the best routes I've ever climbed on of any grade.
that helps.
Uh, so like I just really enjoy climbing on it. Um, like I'm looking forward to never doing the opening boulder again, but it's because I've done another route that shares that same opening boulder. So I've done it like many, many, many times, and it's a hard boulder. Like I don't get through it every time. Um, so I'm looking forward to like hopefully never doing that again or avoiding that for a long, long time. But beyond that, like I genuinely enjoy like my time on the route, and getting to try hard on it. And like I'm not having to like convince myself to tie in and be like, am I really doing this again?
Yeah.
No, it's like, God, I get back from the day and I'm like, I can't wait to go back out.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. I think it's really good for people to hear that kind of just continuous motivation too.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's um whenever I see people who are like, I don't enjoy trying something more often, or like more than a couple times, or more than a couple days, or more than one season, or whatever, it's sort of I'm not sure this is true for everybody, but it seems like there's some amount of like you're setting a time frame in which you like need to succeed on, and you feel like you're sort of failing if you don't succeed in that time frame. Um, and I, well, I think there's some positives to that in terms of like forcing you to try really hard and move on maybe before it's been too long. Um, I don't when I try a route that I know is like hard for me. Um, like when I first tried this route, I wasn't sure I could do it. Right. So, and that's like at all ever kind of thing. And so there's no like real time frame on that I've put on success. Like I just want to do the route eventually.
Mm. Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, yeah, like I would really like to stop climbing on it because I've succeeded already. Like so I'm not suggesting I'm just like, oh, it's all good. I get frustrated, I get annoyed. I'm annoyed that I haven't done it yet. Um, you know, I'll yell, I'll curse when I fall off kind of thing. But so I'm not suggesting that I don't like experience those emotions, but ultimately, like I'm not okay with the idea that I'm not going to do it eventually. So I'll just keep trying it.
Mm.
And I think that like the exact, like whether it's was 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, this would be, I guess this would be 4. If I climb on it this fall a bunch, it's like, it really, doesn't, that doesn't really matter to me. Like I'm still going to try it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's great. Well, good luck.
Thanks.
Uh, that's totally vague. I hope that your season goes well this season,
Thanks.
starting in September, but also I hope you have fun in 10 sleep today. So today we came up with this kind of new-ish type of topic that we've never talked about before, really, which is some of the habits that we have that make us that help us be successful. And I'm not saying that we're the most successful people in the world. That is definitely not what we're suggesting here. Um, but just some things that we've, yeah, sort of done in our lives for however long that help us be successful in life and in climbing.
This
So,
was like
Matt,
a perfect segue after talking about how I failed for 3 seasons on a route. But no, yeah, I think we were kind of talking in a meeting we were having just about how I think we've both been doing this for a long time, and some of these things like climbing and um, some of these things we just sort of take for granted as givens that we just do regularly. And so I don't know, at least for me in sort of preparing for this, it was a good exercise in like examining what I do on a sort of daily basis or how I conceive of things too. Um, these things that like really like most like habits are, right, are sort of second nature at this point. But that are sort of like what I feel like contributing factors in helping me sort of
yeah,
become better and as a climber and sort of and just generally like existing.
yeah, yeah. So, what is success to you? Like, first of all, let's take that back. Do you think that you are a successful person?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm like in a climbing context, like, yeah, I feel like I'm improving and getting better. And that's really what success comes down to for me in there. And then yeah, generally in life, like, uh I'm generally happy in my life. Like I'm, enjoy running my home. I enjoy like being somewhat financially secure. Like it's like, yeah, it seems like it's going well. I get to put a lot of effort into the things I really care about. Happy in my relationship. Yeah, happy with what I've sort of the life I've sort of been able to build and lander. So yeah, I guess that's a very vague definition of success, but yeah, I think that's generally how I feel.
I mean, I don't think it's a vague definition of success. I think those are all like, if those are the things that you define as success, then yes, you are being successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's like to put it sort of concretely, I guess it's like those are sort of the things I really value. And I feel like I'm doing reasonably well in those areas. So yeah, that's I guess how I define it for myself.
Yeah, cool. So the way that I define success is it's a lot of the same things, obviously, but like my mental health, if I'm feeling not depressed or anxious and I'm generally motivated and I'm, you know, feeling pretty good, then that would be successful. And my physical health, if I'm like at least dealing with things proactively that come up with my health, and if I'm able to do the things that I want to do, then I feel like I'm being successful with my physical health. And work, same thing. Like I make making enough money to support myself and contribute to my husband's and my joint finances. That's success to me. And if I'm doing things that are helping people, though that all means success to me with work. And with climbing, if I'm like having fun and challenging myself and not getting burnt out on it, with relationships, if I feel like I can be present and kind and loving and staying in regular contact with people. And then the last thing that I define success, it's not the last thing. There's so many things, but like learning, I feel like if I'm in a learning mood and I'm constantly teaching myself new things, um, then I feel like I've been successful in other areas of my life that give me like the energy to want to learn. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I I think we're both sort of maybe defining things slightly differently and our like individual values there showing through a little bit, but I think generally we're kind of on the same page in terms of uh our working definition maybe of like success and how we're going to use this for these habits to kind of frame these habits.
What do you feel like are some of the differences that you saw?
Uh well, I don't know that there's like huge differences. I think it's just more like one of the main things that stood out. And I guess it's you just did a better job of articulating it, but it's like like I know that one of your big like mission statements with training beta is helping people. And it's obviously a big part of, my life as well, like as a coach.
Mhm.
Um, but uh yeah, I just didn't frame that as, part of like my internal definition of success in the same way. Um,
Mhm.
but I think it's still like clearly a shared value. Like I don't think anyone who coaches for a living is like, yeah, I don't really care about other people. Yeah, like I wouldn't that wouldn't sustain the motivation to do that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And then I think one thing you described really well is the idea of like continual learning there, and that's definitely a huge part of um, things for me, like feeling challenged, feeling like and it doesn't have to just be within like the context of climbing or work or coaching or anything like that. Like I always want to feel like I'm moving forward and challenging myself and learning new things as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, like, if I'm not feeling good, I just wanna watch reality TV, you know? And like, lately, I've just been feeling so good, and like, last night, I stayed up until midnight learning about rammed earth homes, like,
yeah,
just random stuff, but it makes me feel alive. So, today, we're gonna share some of the habits that we have that help us to be successful in our lives, and, we're gonna share 3. I have 5 written down, but we're just gonna start with 3 and see how long that takes us to get through them. So, I'm going to go first, or is there anything else that you wanna say, Matt, before we get started?
I guess just that I hope that the maybe what people can try to take from this is less about like the exact specifics of the habit because it can be so situational, right? And like how it fits in your life or what, you can kind of like what if other people's advice to death or like habits to death. It's like, well, what if I can't do that? What if I can't do this? But I think hopefully the general sort of trends and like what we get out of them kind of shines through so that some of this can be actionable advice.
Yeah, for sure. And part of what sparked this is, actually both of us just read you reread and I read for the first time Atomic Habits, which I highly recommend. I think it's really cool, and while reading it, I was kinda like, "You know what? I have good habits." Like, I don't struggle with a lot of these things, but I will say that a lot of that comes from me being extremely unsuccessful for, like, a lot of years of my life, where I felt a lot of anxiety. I felt tired a lot. I didn't feel healthy. My relationships weren't good. Like all of the things. And so I feel like, you know, necessity breeds invention, or I don't know what the
Yeah, yeah. The
thing
saying
is,
is.
but something like that where you know something isn't working and your life is a freaking catastrophe. And so you have to make these changes. So that's where a lot of these come from for me.
All right.
Right.
Yeah. Start us off.
Cool. All right. So this one is like the most basic one, but I really think that a lot of people overlook it is getting enough sleep. So, um, when, so the times when I have felt the actual worst, where I've gone through major depressions, I've gone through like 3 to 4 of them, and it's when I'm not sleeping, and I don't eat, I don't sleep, I feel terrible, I'm a mess. I can't work, I definitely can't exercise, and so my habits with sleep are I try to be in bed for like 9 hours, and my Whoop says that I sleep between 7 and 8, which I think is really crazy because this whole time I've thought that I was sleeping 9 hours, but that's just not really the case with your sleep according to Whoop. But it does like even 7 to 8 is enough for me to like feel pretty good, not have too much anxiety, and be able to do everything that I want to do. Not be grumpy, have my climbing be pretty good. And so I think that that one is really important.
What are some of the things you do to like in, to set yourself up to be able to be consistent with that?
Well, and sometimes I fail, but I try to get into bed by 9:30 or 10, and then I have certain things that I do, like reading at night really helps me sleep well. And then a lot of times, like, I set my schedule up so that, and I know that this is a privilege that I have and that I've created for myself, but a lot of times I don't set an alarm. And so I know that my body's just going to get as much sleep as it needs, which is really important.
Yeah, I guess I do some of the same things. And I'm glad you included this one because it's definitely been a big change in sort of my life. Like my partner Lindsay and I worked in before we moved to Lander, worked in restaurants for a long time as well. And so we were basically on the exact opposite sort of kind of sleep routine as we are now, which is we didn't get enough and we'd be working until, anywhere from 11 at night through to 1, 2 in the morning, depending on, our roles and what we were doing in the restaurants at the time. Um, and now, we both work during the day, don't work at night. And it's been like it was an adjustment at first, but yeah, we do the same thing. And like, I think the biggest things that we changed there were just kind of having sort of a set time that we just we move towards bed. And so yeah, it's somewhere between 9, 9:30, 10 on the latest. But it's like it's not, oh well, let's like move into bed and watch TV or let's move into bed. It's just like we move into bed, phones go away, books come out. And um that paired with just trying to get up consistently at the same time has meant that like I've noticed like I don't have nearly as much trouble as I used to falling asleep or getting up. Like um I'll often like set an alarm if I have something that I really need to be up for, but I genuinely find that most times I wake up sort of like I just wake up by 6:30 every morning and I feel good. And if I've set a 7 o'clock alarm or something, it sort of doesn't. I'll just be like, well, I'll turn that off and moving on. It's
Yeah.
like it's more of a fail safe than when in the past it used to be like, this is going to have to claw me out of bed
Mm,
to be on time for something.
yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like now that it's a little bit different and you guys are on a better, I'm going to say better sleep schedule, do you feel different in your life in climbing?
Um, I'm not sure it's actually had as major an impact for me but it definitely has for Lindsay. Like she for years, like her basically her whole life, she's been like, I'm not a morning person. And now it's like, yeah, she's the same as I am. Like she's up before the alarm. She feels good in the morning. It's like, has time, feels energized. Where it used to be like, if she was up before 9 a.m. kind of thing,
Mm,
it was kind of like a struggle.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I certainly notice if I don't get enough sleep, like it really impacts like my climbing performance.
Mm,
But I'm not. I think even when I like this, I always made sure I was getting enough sleep for the most part. Even when we were working at the restaurants, it was just a question of sometimes that meant, I felt like I am a morning person. I really enjoy the morning time. Um, and it just annoyed me more than anything that I would be like, cool, I can't get out of bed till 9:30, 10 because I worked till 1:30 in the morning last night. And like, yeah, I don't feel as good. But usually once if I got enough, if I got enough sleep, it just shifted the timing. And then later in the day, I'd still be able to like climb or train effectively.
mhm. Yeah. It's important. It's
Yeah.
important for everyone, and I think a lot of people just disregard it just a little bit. So,
Yeah. I guess maybe the takeaway there for me is like you just put an emphasis on it, right? Like you make it a priority.
right.
And so whereas I think and for myself too, I feel like I do this now. I used to sort of just be like, well, we'll see what time I feel tired, I'll just go to bed. And
Mhm.
that could quickly lead to, I'd be like, well, one more episode of whatever, TV show or what. And the next thing you know, it's like, cool, it's 1 in the morning and you're not getting enough sleep. And if you frame that as it's like, well, which is more important? Like actually watching the show that you just like, yeah, maybe it's interesting, maybe it's amazing, whatever, but like it's not going anywhere. You can always watch it tomorrow night or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh and versus like, hey, like it's 9:30. I don't really care how enthralled I am with the show. I'm pretty much like, yeah, it's kind of time to go to bed.
Yeah. Okay, so sleep. What's your first habit?
So I have a sort of a daily it's kind of all wrapped up in like a morning routine, but I'll call it a daily reading habit. Um, and I pretty much am always reading two books. The one is I joke is like my evening book, and one is my morning book. And my habit is more with my morning book. Like my evening book it could be anything, like nonfiction, fiction. But I'm reading that for just enjoyment and to wind down at the end of the day, kind of like we were just talking about. Like it's what I pick up when I get into bed. But my morning book is something that is to keep me learning. And it can be about climbing, it can be about training, it can be about coaching, mindset stuff, productivity, business, whatever. It's something related to like, I feel like I'm kind of trying to actively participate in learning from that to be a better climber, be a better coach, do a better job, for TrainingBeta, that kind of thing. And um, how long I read for each morning totally depends on, what else I have going on the day. But I try to make sure that I at least pick it up. So like this morning, you know, I'm going climbing later today. I got up, had to eat. We were recording earlier than we normally do because of my climbing schedule. I, had to pack my pack, had to deal with getting set up for the podcast. And I didn't have the normal, like my normal amount of time like that. And I usually read while I'm like having my morning coffee, but I still made sure to like I read for 5 minutes.
Mm,
Um, just because it's part of my morning routine. It puts me in a good mood. I like the consistency of it. And I think it helps me sort of set my intention to being open to learning and um, for the day.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say the last thing or I'm sure maybe there's more, but the main way I sort of frame it is I feel like the benefit from it is not only in like knowledge I gain from reading, but in the routine and the structure it kind of gives my day and how it like sets me up the mindset it gives me to like move into the rest of my day. And I
Mhm.
feel like if I start out sort of being open, like, hey, I'm reading this book and I'm valuing what I'm getting from it, then I go into the rest of my day and like starting my work day or, whatever, being more open and uh, to learning and sort of pushing outside my comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that your habits with reading and learning have helped you become a coach? Like, it basically, you just started knowing a lot about training for climbing, and it's because you do a lot of researching and reading and learning and memorizing and, like, really understanding information. And so I think that it's definitely helped you be successful in your career.
Yeah, I mean, like if we zoom back when, like I didn't start working for TrainingBeta as a coach, right? I was doing like more of a content manager kind of role. And
Yep.
then as TrainingBeta was growing and evolving and the coaching industry was sort of kind of, you were like, hey, maybe you should coach. Like you seem to, know a lot at this point. And that was,
Mhm.
yeah, and I think in a large part that this has been a part of it, or like part of why that happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. But I think, yeah, again, it's like I'm not only reading books that are like, say rock climbing in the title.
Yeah.
Like I try to make it like I try to make sure I cover my bases. And if there's like new and interesting, you know, climbing specific books, I'm gonna read them. But um I definitely try to branch out from that, and not just like be so sort of singular in that focus.
Mhm.
Because we can learn a lot from sort of like cross disciplinary stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're saying, like, other sports, other mindset stuff, other.
Yeah, like, I've read books on like Zen Buddhism and stuff, and just like I'll sort of like, I don't know. I guess I have, if I see somebody I respect reading something, I'll put that on, like I keep a reading list, like a list of things I should read is just in the notes on my phone. And then uh I just kind of have a stack of like next book up on my desk.
Mm,
So that like I joke with Lindsay, it's like the on deck circle. And then I have there's like a little coffee table next to a chair I like to read in the morning. And it's like the current morning book stays on the coffee table. And then the next book up is just on the pile on the desk. And then once they're done, they go on the bookshelf.
mm. Yeah, that's a habit. That
Yeah.
sounds like a really ingrained habit, so. And I just wanna make one last comment on that, because like, you do make your breakfast every morning, but it's, like, pretty quick for you to do it, and so then you sit and you have your coffee and your breakfast. Are you having your reading time before you eat?
Usually, yeah.
Okay. The
So
only
it's
reason.
usually like coffee. It's like get up, coffee, and reading, and then I'll like make breakfast. And
Okay,
I mean, if I'm being honest, uh, a lot of the time also like Lindsay will make breakfast, and then
okay, yeah.
yeah. So like
Because
it's sort of a mix, but
all
yeah,
I was gonna say about that is, like, in the mornings, a lot of times, it takes me a little bit to make my breakfast, and so for learning purposes, sometimes I'll listen to, like, something from my school or a podcast that's teaching me something, and so I think you can do it by listening too, because I know that people are
yeah,
commuting or whatever, and so but the habit is the same, it's learning something.
right, yeah. I guess it's again, it's sort of less the specific, like maybe you have your morning's super hectic, and it doesn't fit to sit down and read. Yeah, like listen to a podcast while you're commuting or whatever. But it's again, I think it's more the just positioning or starting your day in with that learning mindset, and actually taking in some useful information, but also just like adopting that mindset right away.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so that was your number 1. My number 2 is, this is so cliche for a nutritionist, but
Hmm.
it is eating well, in parentheses, for my body, all day, every day. And this one I have gone so wrong with. My like, as a teenager, early 20s, my diet was horrible, and I felt it all the time. I had terrible digestive issues, I had really low energy, terrible recovery. I had, like, all kinds of stuff with my health because of it, and I didn't feel good. And so for me, and I know that, some people can fudge a little bit more than I do, but for me, it's like, I don't I don't care about food unless I know it's going to make me feel good. And I have done so much experimentation to figure out, like, how much of everything I need to eat, for each meal and how many meals and what time of the day. And so I basically just do mostly the same thing for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack every day with some variation with like proteins and vegetables. But it is just like such a no-brainer to have that be a part of my habits. And it just makes me feel energetic, like I can focus, and healthy, like my body feels healthy in general.
Nice. Yeah, I think um every time I like spend time with you, like when I stayed with you in Vegas or when I stayed with you in Colorado, I think the thing that stands out to me not isn't necessarily how like any of the specifics of your diet, but just how um consistent you are and how much you're willing to sort of plan ahead and prioritize, fueling and eating in a way that makes you feel good. Whereas, I generally think I eat a really healthy diet and I think about fueling and making sure I get enough protein and all these things, but I'm definitely liable to just sort of like end up like, oh shoot, I don't have food. Oh, didn't plan ahead, didn't grocery shop, or oh, we're going to X place or doing X social thing and I didn't like think ahead. And I just kind of have to sort of scrap it and make it work kind of thing, or I'll just be like, I'm going to be hungry for a little bit and I'll eat later. Um, and I think, I don't have as really any dietary restrictions. And so maybe that just like gives me some more wiggle room to be looser with it. But I'm always impressed by your commitment to, or like how much effort you put into just making that a priority. And I think, yeah, it clearly works for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel like it's out of necessity and not desire, but at the same time, like, I really like to be comfortable, and so I'll do whatever it takes to be comfortable, but that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, so eating well, this is kind of a given, but I had to say it. All right, what's your number 2?
My number two is climbing with people who are better than me. Um, this is something when I was prepping for this podcast and thinking through my habits, uh, I realized that this is something that I've sort of always actively sought out, even when I first sort of started out climbing. Um, and it just seems logical to me. Like I remember in the early days of my climbing, like literally like, first weeks kind of thing, going to a gym, being like, oh, those people are better than me. I should climb with them because they're doing what I want to do. Like I'd like to be better. And I should climb with them or around them and watch and learn from them because I can learn from their approach. I can learn from their process. And I maybe didn't like think of it in that concrete a way right away. But I remember, you know, early in my climbing, I had a job working at this outdoor store in New Jersey called Campmore. And there was a guy there, Peter Jewell, who's one of my early climbing friends. He's actually one of the shapers for Kilter holds now. And we still kind of like see each other in Waco pretty regularly. But, I was like pretty brand new to climbing, you know, V3, V4 kind of thing. And I don't remember the exact, but he was climbing better, like V7, V through, I think, pushing into harder grades and being like, he also worked at Campmore. And I was just like, I should climb with him. Like I want to climb with Pete because he's better than me. And that sort of continued. I've had the kind of privilege to do that. Of like a lot of my main partners over the years have been quite a bit better than me. Like I've climbed a lot with Jonathan Segrist. I've traveled for extensively with Sam Elias, Brown Lander. I climb a lot with BJ Tilden. And I know that like a lot of those people are like really high level climbers. But I think it still scales. And like, I don't know, success leaves tracks. So it's like, I kind of feel like I can like hitch my wagon to these people who are, climbing way better than me. And, with those guys who I just named are climbing probably better than I ever will. But it kind of like helps pull me along.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that I don't see everyone do all the time, but I think it's something, you can actively seek out. And I really feel like it has played a huge role in sort of my progression as a climber.
How so?
just in learning what to do, right? Like, how do you conduct yourself? Like, what do what do you do at the cliff? Like, how do you approach this? Like, what's a climbing day look like? Like, what do you, when, one of the amazing things about climbing is you can have the same experience uh, on something that's the same relative difficulty to your abilities as
Mhm.
an elite climber is having on something relative to their uh, ability levels. So, like, one example, it was actually when we met the first time. Like, you and Jonathan were staying together in Vegas, and I came down on a trip to visit and slept on the couch in your guys' place. And I was mostly bouldering, and Jonathan kind of convinced me to go out to the Gorilla Cliffs, or not the Gorilla Cliffs, the Black and Tan Wall in the Utah Hills, because he needed a belay. And he was like, dude, you're totally going to like it. Like, it's awesome. They're short boulder routes, and there's this cool one. I bet you'll do it, blah, blah, blah. Basically, he sold me on coming out to belay him. And I was happy to go. And he was right. I was psyched. Like, and I got to climb with him. And he was trying, I never remember which one's which there, but one of the like 14 Bs at the cliff. And I remember watching him go up the route and like for the first time and sort of like take on every bowl. He like didn't do all the moves even. Some of them he like didn't even try really. He was just like, because it's pretty sharp rock there. And he was just sort of like, okay. And I was like, oh man, like, yeah, guess this is going to take a little bit of effort kind of thing. And, but he goes through the route, comes down, belays me. I kind of like, I think I was trying this like 8A thing nearby and like didn't do it, whatever. And then I'm like, okay, well, Jonathan's going to have another like working go. And he just like tied in and like hiked it. And it looked like absolutely nothing. And I was like really taken aback. And there's sort of like the immediate shock value of like, whoa, that's really impressive. But I was also like, wow, he's so deliberate with how he spends his energy, his skin, everything. Like, there were moves that like he didn't even try because he was just like, okay, I know what to do,
Mm.
but if I do that, like I'm pulling this small, sharp crimp, that's going to cost me skin. And
Mm.
he's like so confident and in tune with like what he needs to do to get a route done that he was just like, cool, I'll do it on the go. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's like bit him in the ass sometimes as well. But but yeah, it was just really impressive. And that was just like, that's just a standout example where I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm being deliberate in like how I suss a route or how I approach, learning how to do a boulder or route. But like he was operating on a much higher sort of level, not
Mhm.
just in terms of difficulty of the route, but in terms of um, the attention to detail and the just how deliberate he was with it. And so that's just an example. I was like, okay, like I might not be like at the time I think I was climbing like 13C. Um, but I was able to like I was like, I might not be climbing 514 or 515, but I can apply that to routes that I'm currently working on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. I'm sure there are 100 other examples just like that from other people we've climbed with.
Totally. Um, yeah, like I said, and that's just it's something that I've just like always actively sought out. And it wasn't really until sort of prepping this podcast that I really thought about how consistent of a pattern it's been.
Mhm.
Um, but I really feel like it's an important habit and something I do. And
Yeah.
again, it just makes sense to me. Like, why wouldn't you want to climb it? It's like, oh, hey, like you're doing that route that I'd like to do, and you have climbed better than me. Like, I can learn from you.
Well,
And I think that what I want to add to that is like you it doesn't have to be this weird I feel like I also offer something in return, right? Like if you need, in that example I just used with Jonathan, like he needed a belay. Like
mhm.
the black and tan isn't like, you know, it's not a cliff that like everyone's lining up to go to all the time. And so, I was also offering like a belay support, you know, I feel like I do a really good job of keeping a positive attitude and being psyched to the cliff. And like, so like you can offer other things to partners. Like you don't have to be the one who's like, you know, uh, just like, hey, you're better than me. I want to climb with you because I'm going to learn. But, you know, from you, like, it doesn't have to be this awkward thing, but you can just, it's like, I don't know, if somebody comes up to me and they're like, hey, whether they're better than me or not, they're like, hey, I want to climb where you're trying to climb. I'll be consistent and off and give you a belay or carry pads to the problems that you want to go to. And then like, I'm not going to say no to that. Like, that's
Mhm.
great. You know, this is awesome. Now I don't have to stress partners. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, if you offer consistent, uh, to be a consistent and like reliable partner, like a lot of people are just going to jump at that.
Mhm. I do want to point out a similarity or yeah, a similarity between this one and oh no, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, right. In the beginning, when I asked you why, like how you stay so motivated after, it's going to be your fourth season on this route that you're trying. And in my mind, what I was thinking was like, it's really impressive how you do not fear failure. Like, I mean, in ways I'm sure you do, but it's not keeping you from continuing to try. Like your, I'm going to say in quotes, failure so far to send has not kept you from continuing to try, right? And the same thing can be said here with climbing with stronger people, because I think a lot of people don't like climbing with stronger people because it makes them feel bad about themselves. And you don't have that. Like, you don't care. All you wanna do is learn, and this is, like, your growth mindset showing through all the time in your life.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. It's a good way of putting it. And for the record, I don't think you have to put my failure so far in quotes. Like it is what it is, right? Like I haven't done the route. Like it doesn't make me like feel bad, you know?
Right,
Um,
and that's exactly what
yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah. But yeah, no, I think yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I don't know. In my coaching, I run into this. It doesn't, yeah, I feel like I'm confident in like I'm confident being the climber I am. Like it doesn't, I'm routinely the weakest one in the group I'm
Right.
climbing at, and I'm not like, I don't think I'm a total slouch here, but like, I mean, hell, like I, I climb a lot with BJ and he literally warms up on routes that are like, I can't do.
Yeah.
So, and he's just got ruthlessly dialed and like, or things that like would be like lifetime ticks for me.
Mhm.
Like that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and it just doesn't bother me. And I think that we can be like, I know that like I certainly value him as a partner. And I know that he also values me as a partner in even just because like, hey, I'm going climbing with him today because he's got a project that he's working on. And like again, similar situation to what I was describing with Jonathan and the Black and Tan, like people aren't lining up to go climb at this crag. So like even just the simple fact that I'm willing to go belay like makes me a valuable partner there.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think but yeah, it just doesn't bother me at all to be the quote weakest or the worst person in the group or at the cliff or anything.
Yeah. Like, even climbing with Paige, I've just and all of the other people who I climb with who are way stronger than I am. There's just you just have to have this detachment from it where you're like, I don't compare myself to them. Like, that is a different species over there. I am me. I'm having fun.
Yeah.
And you just totally separate yourself. And then it can be like a really good learning experience and super fun.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the other thing to remember there is like everyone's going through the same sort of struggle,
Mhm.
like because if you talk to any of like, Paige, Jonathan, BJ, Sam, whatever, um, about their projects, like they're gonna say the same things. Like they have doubt, they stress sending or not sending. You know, like they go through all those same things. So we're all doing the same thing. It's just scaled to our own sort of difficulty. But it just seems like an obvious, or always has seemed like an obvious learning opportunity to me. Be like, hey, if we're all doing this, but you're doing it at such a higher level, or even a slightly higher level, like, well, maybe there's something I can learn to help raise my level from sort of being attached to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So that was climbing with people who are stronger than you is one of your habits. And then I'll move on to my habit number three, which is having a mostly set schedule, which kind of makes me want to throw up to say it because this is actually a new thing for me. I mean, I've always had sort of a schedule, but as a business owner, and a person whose highest value in life is freedom, like having a set schedule is kind of like the idea of it is kind of like being in jail for me. But I found myself being really like pretty anxious about not achieving certain things, not knowing when I was going to go to the gym or when I was going to do a certain thing for work or when I would have time to take my dog to the reservoir for a walk or like I've just been kind of all over the place every day of the week and then trying to also climb a lot. And so it's just been kind of hectic, but I know this isn't like an ingrained habit in me yet, but I really, really love it. Even over the past few weeks, I've had a set schedule every day where there is a little bit of wiggle room. Um, but I have a set amount of time that I'm working. I have set times when I go do all of these other things. I have a set day for errands and chores. I have like set days that I'm climbing and it's just brought like so much more productivity to me and like contentment and joy. And so that translates into my every part of my life, but also my climbing because I feel like, okay, when I'm climbing and I don't have to be worrying about anything else. I know I've done a lot that day to, feel like I've achieved something. And I know that these times are allotted. So I think that that has been really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, like I also really sort of value freedom. Like we both have made career choices and worked really hard to set ourselves up with the ability to like have flexibility in our schedule and stuff. But I feel the same way. Like it there's sort of this maybe naive idea that like, hey, if you just can do whatever you want whenever you want, you're going to be happier. But it just leads to like you constantly have to be making sort of choices about how you're going to spend your time. Like, well, should I be doing this right now because it has to happen, or should I go climbing, or should I, watch TV because relaxing is important too, and and it, yeah, like when you, I feel like, yeah, I feel the same way when I'm maybe not, I'm not sure how sort of scheduled you are right now, but whenever I am in more of a routine with my schedule, I definitely feel sort of just more at ease. Like it's easier to be like, okay, cool. Like, you know, uh, on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, that's when I do client calls. And so um, I try pretty hard to keep those days open and available. And then, you know, I don't feel bad about the fact that, like today's Wednesday and I'm going climbing this afternoon.
Hmm.
Um, because I'm like, well, it wasn't like, oh, well, this was when I should be doing this. Because I was like, no, I did it the last 2 days and I'm gonna do it tomorrow. So I have time to do that today.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. And I think what I'd like to maybe add to that is like it can how much of it you do, I feel like can be like how scheduled and routine you are, like with your regular schedule. Like I go through periods where I'm really open to, or like I schedule my climbing days. Like, oh, okay, let's say Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, or something,
Hmm.
And I'm like, especially if I'm kind of in a training mode, I'll be sort of more strict with that. But when I'm sort of more in season, like, hey, the weather doesn't always cooperate, right? And so I'll be way more open to being like, okay, I'm going to be more flexible with my schedule to try to climb more. And sometimes that means I have to, move things around and sort of scramble a little bit. But that's like, I only do that for certain periods of time. And I try to be sort of deliberate with that, like when that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and this takes some forethought and planning. Like I'll find myself now planning 3 or 4 weeks ahead on a Friday because I want to get something done and I know that it needs to be done on this day, whatever. Like it takes some forethought. And I wanted to say that I know that not everybody's like us. Like not everybody is a whatever, have such a flexible schedule. A lot of people have jobs, but I do think that people can get overwhelmed because they don't do, planning whether it's childcare, climbing partners, like meal prep, whatever it is that allows them to then have the time to do the things that they want to do. So like having that set schedule, I think can really be helpful.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
Okay. So what is your number three?
So I kind of had trouble coming up with the third one initially. Because I, I was, yeah, I don't know. I just like nothing super profound was coming up. And so I was reflecting on like what I feel like really has contributed to my success as a climber for this one. What I came up with is like just simply the habit of showing up. I feel like consistency in is always the sort of most important factor when it comes to training, getting better at climbing performance. And when I really think about it, in the last like hell 10 to 13 years kind of thing, I really like I'm not the kind of person who like misses sessions, who like lets days at the cliff, slip away kind of thing. Like I'm really consistent in how much I climb. Like I've barring sort of injury, sickness kind of thing. Uh, I, I think I'd be hard pressed to find more than like a week or two periods during that time where I haven't been climbing 3 to 4 times a week.
Mm.
Um, for 13 plus years, right? That's basically like since I moved to Wyoming. Um, and it's I sort of find myself preaching that in my coaching all the time. It's like, hey, like just show up. Like, um, it's kind of a prerequisite. Uh, but I think what the underlying lesson is like I'm always looking for a reason why I can climb, like why I can go to the cliff or why I can train rather than the other way around. And for sure, you get skunked sometimes. Like, you're like, basically like if two people look at the forecast and it says like 50% chance of rain, some people are like, that's like a high probability of rain. Like I might get wet. It's not worth going. Where I'm like, that's a 50% chance of a good day. Uh, and like that sounds silly, but like I truly look at it that way most of the time. And like, yeah, you get rained on, conditions suck, whatever, but you also end up with days with like I think you come out on top in the long run, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I've kind of like tried to make a habit of that, of just like if there's any chance it's worth climbing or training, then I'm gonna do it and show up.
Um, I mean, in your experience working with clients, what is it that you see makes people not show up?
The For the most part, the most common thing I see the is thinking that the investment of like what it takes to go to the gym for a day or go out to the cliff or the crag or the boulders for a day sort of isn't worth it. So I'll see people be like that example I just gave of like the forecast, and be like, I don't know, it's just not really looking like it might be kind of crappy and I'm gonna have to drive a bit. And so I think it brings up an important point. Like I'm sure that some people listening to this right now, if you like know Lander, Wyoming, are like, yeah, cool. Like, wow, you show up at the cliff all the time. That's great. Like there's cliffs 7 minutes from downtown in Lander, like huge investment. But like I've only lived in Lander for like a year and a half now. For the, 12 or whatever, 11 and a half years before that, I was living in Jackson, which it was a 3 hour drive, depending on the cliff, 3 to 4 hour drive each way to go. And I would roll the dice often,
Mm.
and just be like, yeah, hopefully it pans out. Uh, and whether if that's there's like numerous times, like if our friend Dusty is still doing the same thing, was on the recording right now too, he'd be chuckling like we, especially with like winter climbing and sinks, it's like it's happened so many times and it's so frustrating. But you drive 3 hours, hike up to sinks, it's gorgeous and sunny. It's been snowing sideways in Jackson forever, and you're like, this is awesome. And you like do your first two warm up routes, and then you're like tying in to try your project, and it's like the clouds come in, the wind picks up, and it's like instant numb out. Day
Mm,
sucks, and you're like, well, that that was pretty shitty that we just drove, and
got
now
to warm
three
up.
hours got to warm up, and now we're gonna numb out a little bit,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna drive back. But and that's objectively frustrating. But both of us over the years have always, when you're like living here now, I'm often be like, cool, like, yeah, maybe I'll leave, go climb inside, whatever. But if I've driven 3 hours to get to the cliff, like I'm gonna keep climbing. And so you're like, okay, maybe it's numb out, but and not like sending weather, but then I'd try a different route and sort beta, like, and that sets you up then to like take advantage of the days and times where it is good. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I mean, what I'm thinking of, and this kind of ties into my next one, which I'll only do one more, but basically, like sometimes when the conditions aren't perfect or I'm supposed to go to the gym, but I really kind of don't feel like it, it's sometimes been because A, might be afraid of failure. I'm like, oh, well, I want to go try my project today, but it's rainy and I, it's kind of like an excuse to not experience failure. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And
totally.
I think that a lot of people have that where they're like, well, or I could just not experience that feeling
Right.
and use the rain as an excuse. So there's that, and then sometimes I also will get kind of bored of what I'm doing, like in the gym or whatever. And so my next habit that I do is that I vary my workouts in the gym. And this sort of came from, like when Steve Bechtel first came out with his logical progression stuff, where it's like one day you do strength, one day you do endurance, one day you do capacity, whatever it is. And but I think I've always kind of done this because freedom and variety are the spice of my life. And so like I'll go in and do like yesterday I did a performance day. The day before that I did triples on routes. The day before that I moonboarded. And so I like try to keep things really fresh for myself so I have something to be excited about. And like some rest built in where I'm just doing like easy laps some days. And I feel like it's helped keep me consistently strong for me and consistently in the gym and outside and motivated.
Yeah. So I think this was like a good sort of segue. What you're saying is like you varying your workouts has been a tool or a habit that you've used to help you keep showing up,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of those. Uh, we could talk forever about it, but I think that the important thing there is that I kind of always circle back to is like you can always find excuses,
Mm,
right? But it's also if you flip it on its head, like if you want it bad enough, you'll find the time and make it happen. Is
yeah.
and I you know and I know that sounds like super privileged and whatever, but it's also if we put it in the performance context, like the rocks don't owe us anything. So like it's just kind of a reality that if you want to do what you want to achieve your goals, like you have to go for it in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, the rocks definitely don't owe us anything. Yeah. Okay. I kind of wanted to keep this one sort of short, and we're at exactly an hour right now.
Boom.
So, what are some closing thoughts you have about all this?
Um, well, I think it was interesting that we didn't share our habits with each other that we were going to do beforehand, and I feel like they kind of flowed together pretty well,
Yeah.
uh, which I think is interesting. Um, not sure what that says, but uh, but yeah, I don't know. I just hope that again, that like kind of how I launched into this. I hope that people take it's less, I think, about the specifics of our individual habits because everyone's got their own schedule and whatever, but and constraints and pressures and stuff on their time, but more just the general approach. Um, and I think to me, what the common thread was sort of like we we both take the steps necessary in our lives to prioritize the things that we really want to do, even if it is maybe less fun or less free feeling in the moment. Um, and that we take steps to sort of like to feel good while we're doing it, and control what we can control. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that's if you set your habits up to do that, I think that's a step in the right direction for anybody in anything, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And just being consistent and like having also time for continual reflection on your life, how happy you are in your life, what needs to change in order for you to reach your goals or be the person you want to be and like making changes.
Agreed.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing all of this. I appreciate it. And I'm gonna let you go climbing now.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm gonna go show up
Okay. Yeah.
and climb
Go
with somebody who's better than me. It's gonna be great.
go be consistent.
Yeah.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Neely.